Hey everybody, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Marquit.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Today we have a special guest with us. His name is Jason Gaddis. He's a dad, he's a husband, he's a relationship expert, and he's the host of the Smart Couple Podcast. Jason, welcome to Personality Hacker.
Thanks, guys. What's up?
You're out in Boulder, Colorado, and you work in the relationship field, helping people, I guess, create amazing relationships with each other. How did you, what's your story? How did you get to this place? Why are you doing this? Where did you come from? What's going on for you?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the story part, and maybe it'll tag into some of the other questions you just threw in there. I was a pretty big failure at relationship, and in my 20s, I was the guy, a little bit of a player. I would move from relationship to relationship, woman to woman, and the grass was always greener somewhere else. And I always made the woman I was dating wrong, and I always found some kind of fault with her. And looking back on it, what I was doing was anytime she needed something and started getting emotional and wanted to have the talk, I got uncomfortable. And I would blame her for my discomfort and leave and move on because I didn't want discomfort. I thought that relationship meant that it was supposed to feel good all the time. I thought that the warm fuzzies of that, or the early few months, the honeymoon period, were supposed to last, and I really was hooked into that. So when it got hard or intense or she got emotional, I was like, out, peace out. And I did that 7 times. And after my 7th failed relationship, I finally realized that I was the one common denominator in all those failures. And it was a massive insight, a life-changing moment in time. I was sitting in a car with her, breaking up with my 7th girlfriend, and said, oh my God, and I just got it right there in the car, and I realized that if I was the one common denominator, I could do something about that. And then within a year, I was off to grad school to study myself in a 3-year master's program in psychology, and I just devoured everything I could on relationship because I was just determined to figure this shit out because I was a mess and it felt terrible. So that's the short of it.
Did you change your? I think we all want to feel good in a relationship. Did you, in the midst of this, change the goal you had originally to feel good and be happy? Isn't that the goal of all of us, right? So how did that shift for you?
Yeah, that's an important question. I started to study Buddhism, and I started to meditate, and I started to learn from teachers they were just holding a bigger view, and the kind of view that included challenge and support, and that included that, it's all grist for the mill. Whatever we go through is important, part of our journey and part of life, and what doesn't kill you can only make you stronger. Those kind of messages started to pervade my being, and I started to really look around against my own experience and say, yeah, that feels true to me. Like, wow, these are all opportunities for me to grow and to learn more about myself. And so I had to slowly embrace the view. And initially it was the Vajrayana view in Buddhism that, basically says that everything is sacred. So once I got that, I was like, oh, that means that relationship is inherently hard, especially a long-term one. And if I don't make that a problem, maybe I can learn some things that will actually make it more fulfilling. Because, I want my word isn't happiness. I don't really care about that, but I want fulfillment. And so that includes all the gnarly stuff, the dark and the light. And how do I be myself, be true to myself, and be fulfilled in a relationship? Because so much of what we do in a relationship is we abandon ourselves, right, to purchase connection. So once I got that, it opened up a whole new way to relate to people and to partners.
Yeah. And something here a little bit and you hinted at this before we got on the air, but there is something to be said for the fact that you're a man and you took charge and were proactive about relationship. Not that I don't think men can do that, but it feels like we as men seem to outsource this idea of relationship. We have a couple things that are important to us, but it's almost like it's not something that we really want to get involved with. It's something that will just happen on its own. But to be proactive as a man in relationship, that's, it almost can sometimes feel, and you listening might feel this way too, like that's maybe the woman's role in a relationship if you're in a heterosexual relationship. And the context of this conversation is heterosexual relationships, just because that's what I know so far right now. And I think that's what we're talking about. But I think this could be applied to a broader perspective on that too. But talk a little bit about you as a man wanting to be thinking and dealing with relationship. Did you get any pushback? Maybe guy friends of yours? Did women look at you weird because you were taking proactive role in this? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean that's a good one because I'm a very sensitive cat, and growing up I was a really sensitive boy, and I was always the kid on the playground feeling sorry for other kids that were getting beat up, or I was like the empath, right? And that skill, I had that skill, but it was also kind of buried and repressed because I had a pretty stern father. So I learned to be tough and have a shell, even though underneath I was really soft and fuzzy, right? So when I got into relationship stuff, I guess I had the added bonus of I went to grad school and I left all my friends behind. I literally moved to Boulder, Colorado, knowing no one, and at age 29, and was like, okay, I'm basically starting over. Because what I noticed is at every stage when I grow is my friends or my peer circle or my family, they want me to stay the old me, and they have me in boxes. So I had to just get out of Dodge and start over. And in doing so, I kind of got to reinvent myself and be who I it felt better to be, which was more authentically me, and to be a mess and to fall apart and to surround myself with people in grad school, even though I was studying to be a therapist. There was still mostly women around me. There was just a few guys in my class. I was one of the few men. Still having a few men and lots of women, we were all in the same conversation, which was how do we grow, how do we evolve ourselves, how do we learn more about ourselves, and how do we help other people with their shit. So it felt like a really supportive environment for me. And then I got into, I pretty quickly got that I want new male friends that are like vibing at my level and want to be real and talk about the shit and the edgy stuff. And so I sought out a men's group.
Okay. And I'm guessing that was pretty important for you. Go back to your parents for a second. How was your parents' model of relationship for you? Were they together? Was it a broken home? What did you see from your parents?
Yeah, my parents were largely awesome and kicked ass. And the part they missed that they didn't value and didn't care about was the attunement and connection and kind of relating. They did all these other areas really well, and that was the area they just didn't have a lot of skill in, and so I naturally sought that out in my friendships. But I grew up in a great home, and yeah, there was a lot of intensity and stern dad, kind of needy mom. But I learned to dodge and weave through that, and I created a lot of really fascinating patterns that we could talk about in terms of how that started showing up when I got married finally, and that was a whole nother monster to slay. But overall, good family, I'd say. And my parents are still married, and it's not a marriage I would want to necessarily live inside of, because they tend to compartmentalize their issues. But they're still married, 53 years later.
Wow.
And they have something that's working, right? If they're together that long, I mean, what I love about them is they have each other's back. They really do, and that's with all their stuffing issues and compartmentalizing. So I really respect that.
So then the answer to potential pushback was this was more important than that pushback. So you were willing to reestablish relationships with people who would be supportive. And it feels like whenever anybody has a rebirth or a phoenix rising from the ashes moment, which is I can't keep doing this, and my environment is part of why I keep doing this, then get a new environment and surround yourself with people who will support the next, shift. And I think that that's a really, going even para of the actual conversation around relationships, I think that's just a healthy perspective for any time you need to go to the next level. And if your current environment is not supporting that scaling up, then you got to go find a new environment, basically. Is that effectively?
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly right. And just to kind of unpack the word support there that you mentioned, is supportive relationships to me include challenge. So a lot of our old friends want to support us, but they want to support us in being our smaller self and our old self. And they want to keep us, they literally and unconsciously support us in staying small. So it's obviously not that kind of support we're talking about here. We're talking about the kind of support that challenges us to be who we are and to keep expanding and growing ourselves. So those are the friends I was seeking.
Yeah. You said something before that struck me that I just had to like immediately write it down. You said that we abandon ourselves to purchase connection, which was a really powerful statement. Would you be willing to unpack that a little bit?
Sure. To me, that's the core human wound that we all have. I mean, look, whatever relationship, family of origin situation you grew up in, you did that. You purchased connection at the expense of who you are. Gabor Mate talks about that we have two fundamental human needs, the need to connect and the need to be authentically expressed. And so if you're a sensitive little kid and you grow up with a family where your parents have limitations and they have issues with certain emotional outbursts or expressions, that's pretty much every single family out there. So you're going to stop doing behaviors that they disapprove of, and you're going to start doing more of the behaviors they approve of and smile and give you praise for. And that's all of us, right? So we abandon what's actually genuine for us and in service of connection, and that's the human injury. And so what I love about relationship work is that the dance is to come back to who we are through relationship. That's the only place to do that dance. If you've been hurt in a relationship like that and that severance was caused there, then get married and you're going to find out real quick that you're going to abandon yourself to purchase connection in your marriage. And that sucks. It's supposed to hurt. So the work is like, oh shit, how do I do this? How do I be myself and stay in relationship with my partner?
So then would you say that a really good, healthy relationship is one that reconciles the two, that gives you both the connection and the authentic expression?
Yeah, that's right. And that we have each other's back on that. Now, granted, I don't have a fantasy that there's a finish line there. I think it's always a work in progress to move closer and closer towards who we genuinely are at our core essence. And so there's just, especially if you have children, I mean, you guys know as parents that our kids then will start to trigger places in us that feel unfinished, and we might start acting out the same type of stuff with them. So yeah, it's a beautiful path, if you want to call it that, to be with someone long term to work these things out.
Mm-hmm. So then in our relationship, one of the things that Joel and I remind ourselves of on a regular basis, especially if we're going through like a really tough time, and we're pretty calibrated to each other's connection with each other. Like a couple days will go by and I feel really disconnected from you and I'm not really sure why. And we'll have a conversation around reconnecting. And sometimes we're just disconnected for a while. Like I've noticed that. Like sometimes it's just like, this is just where we're at right now. And I'm not really sure how to find, our connection again. And one of the words that we've been using a lot lately is the word intimacy. Like that seems to be our relationship goal, is to get to go as far down the rabbit hole of intimacy as humanly possible. And whatever we have to do to get to the next stage of intimacy, which is, sometimes being radically honest with ourselves and we haven't been, or radically honest with the other person and we haven't been, or to have a breakdown when we've been trying to hold off on having a breakdown because we didn't want to burden the other person, but that was what was needed. And so for us, it just feels like the more we tear down and build up and tear down and build up, the more intimate we become, truly, truly intimate, which is the word that I would use as the combination of connection and authenticity. Like that feels like intimacy sort of becomes the immersion of that. So I guess I'm just sort of sharing the words that we're using, but what are some of the maybe the models or the tools or some of the things that you recommend to people in order to get to their level of connection and authentic expression?
Cool. I just wanted to appreciate your comment there before the question is how you and Joel continue to go down the rabbit hole to get a deeper level of connection with each other. I just really want to celebrate that. And I call that kind of what you're seeking there, what you're calling intimacy, I call the secure home base. It's how my wife and I keep coming back to the secure home base. That's the soft place to land, where we know that we're okay and we've got each other's back and we're here to really, it's like a well, right? It's like this endless well. When my wife and I are connected, it's like anything's possible. When we're disconnected, that's challenging. And I feel more challenged that day when we're disconnected. So I just love that you're tethered to that.
Thank you.
So back to tools. How the hell do we come back into connection, for example? I think what you said to Joel is one of the first things that we can say to our partner, which is to be aware and to notice. It's like raising our hand and saying, excuse me, honey, I'm not feeling very connected to you. And what I love about that is it's a responsible statement. It's not a blame, or it's not you tracking them incessantly like, hey, where are you? What's wrong? What's going on with you? Because if we grew up in a family where our mom was doing that all the time, that can start to feel really grating to have our partner watching us all the time. So I find it a little more of a more effective Aikido move to just take responsibility like you did and say, hey, I feel disconnected. So that's one of my favorite statements to get back into connection, is to name the disconnection, right? Another one is to go be with, if let's say I am feeling disconnected from my wife and we got in a fight, is to go be alone and to go take space and to go sit with what happened or what's going on. Why am I feeling this way? Why are we struggling? And my goal is always to take responsibility. So I just go down the rabbit hole myself and say, okay, what did I do? What did I not do? What did I say? What did I not say? That could potentially put my partner on the defensive or shut them down. And then I'm just going to come back in relationship to them when they're ready and when I'm ready and say, hey, and just own up to it, right? So just owning our stuff is critical, or you're not going to go very far, right? That's the evolving couple moves from blame into personal responsibility.
So there was a really interesting model that Joel introduced to me that he got from you when you guys first talked. It was a model about different styles of relationships. And I don't remember the exact words, but it was like a playful relationship, a comfort relationship, or a growth relationship. Or what was...
Yeah.
Could you expand?
This is the crux of why we wanted Jayson on this program. Is I think this... I love the fact, and we are called Personality Hacker, Jayson, and you listening, you know that we do personality types, but really we're all about personal growth. And I love Jayson's approach to relationship in the context of using it to grow personally, for personal growth. So Jayson, that I forget I think it's your you called it I forget the name of the model. Was it the marriage map or the something of this nature? And you basically outlined the 3 different types of relationships. Can you unpack that for us? I think it's a really powerful model to look at.
Yeah, you got it. So I call this the marriage success map, and there's basically on the map, there's 3 ways that you can go in a marriage. There's 3 paths, if you will. The first path is the comfort and security path. And think of it like a trail, like you're going to go down the comfort and security trail. And 2 people that get married here, they're really all about establishing comfort and security and being safe. And there's nothing wrong with this path. It's actually great, especially if both parties are on board. You can create kind of a stable, comfortable life together, and that's one option. Okay, so the second one is pleasure and fun. And these people like to have a good time, and they just want the relationship to feel good and always be in a place that feels like the honeymoon stage. And they want dopamine, they want quick hits of affection, they're very touchy-feely, sexually oriented. So that's the second type and the second path. And then the third path is the growth development path. And this, in my experience, is the only path that is sustainable long-term, and the only path where 2 people can actually get stronger over time and weather any storm that they go through. Why? Because they're willing to grow and develop themselves. Because long-term relationship is really about growth. And so if you get stuck in the first or second path, you're doomed for affairs and divorce and other relationship challenges that you won't know how to tackle. And if you're not willing to go learn how to tackle those challenges, like learning how to do conflict, learning how to clear resentments, if you don't learn how to do any of that, the stuff just piles up, right? As you guys know, it festers and gets harder and harder to deal with. And if you're a comfort and security type, you want to just go back to your comfortable place. And if you're a pleasure and fun person, you just want to be like, why is there so much drama? Can't we just have a good time? And that will be your complaint. And so the irony here is that if you really want pleasure and fun, or if you want stability and comfort and security, the way to get that is through the third path, which is growth and development. So they're not like exclusionary here. It's if you're into growth and development, you get to have hits of security along the way. You get to learn how to establish a secure, safe home base, and you get to have a really good time. But it's because you work really hard and you face all the challenges that come up.
So if somebody in the that's listening, if the fourth person who's listening can talk, if they're trying to diagnose their own relationship, what are some of the markers for each of these styles of relationship?
Well, if they're listening to this podcast, they're probably in the growth and development, and they might have a partner who is into pleasure and fun or comfort and security. And I think it just, you think of those words. What does it mean to be secure and to want comfort? And if you're someone who would rather watch the game than go to a personal growth workshop, you're probably into comfort and security. If you would rather, when emotions get really strong and you are in a fight and you go to Facebook or food or sugar, you're probably a comfort and security type, right? Mm-hmm. And if you are in a fight with your spouse and you are a guy, rather than deal with yourself in the fight, you just want to go blow off some steam with your friends that night and kind of forget about it, you're a pleasure and fun type. So we all have our strategies to avoid what our stuff is, right? And you got to look at, do you seek kind of up and out and being social, or do you go down inside and you want to kind of hibernate and hide out? That would be more the comfort and security type. So those are just some ideas.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, I'm completely taking over questioning Joel.
No, this is really good stuff.
Okay.
I mean, you have another question, please go ahead.
He just keeps triggering me for more and more questions.
Yeah, I know.
It will be
this
endless.
is a great conversation. Go ahead.
So, one thing that's coming up for me is a very good friend of mine one time, in a very pithy manner, characteristic of him, defined a codependent relationship as, I won't call you on your shit if you won't call me on mine. And which I loved, and now that's just become my definition of codependence. And it feels like the first two, the reason why they're not sustainable, the comfort and the pleasure, fun relationships are not sustainable, is because they sort of require codependence. They sort of require you to not, to make that unspoken contract between the two people that we're just not going to go down any of those roads because it'll disturb my calm or it will take me away from the honeymoon feeling. But the growth relationship requires you to transcend that. You've got to get out of the codependence. You have to be willing to call each other on each other's shit. And that means that every time you point the finger at the other person, then that means that you're opening yourself up to having them go, well, but you also too. And then you have to work through that uncomfortable phase. So I don't know if that resonates with you. And if it doesn't, I'd love to hear, what your thoughts are on that. But if that is accurate, do you have any strategies for people to get out of that earlier level, those first two levels, and then graduate to the next one? Especially as you mentioned, and one thing that was really interesting is that you said, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a growth-oriented person, but you might be in a relationship with somebody who's not. So do you have any strategies for people who are in a relationship where that feels a little stratified, and ways to encourage maybe their mate to be more growth-oriented? And saying that, of course, with the thought that you had before, which is everything is basically on me. Like I've got to be the person who's taking proactive steps. I've got to be the person who owns it.
Yeah, totally. So to your first point, I think it's just really human nature to collude with the path of least resistance. So it's in all of us to look for the easy way out and to try to do the least challenging thing to make us feel okay or safe. And depending on the environment we grew up in, a lot of us are just oriented and wired that way. We're sort of seeking survival and comfort and safety. So again, there's nothing wrong with that here, right? We do that. And if you aren't aware of it and you medicate your life away with all the endless amounts of distractions that we have in this world, that's okay too. But don't expect to have a fulfilling relationship. You will have a relationship where the two of you watch the game together or just watch movies together or just do more of checking out behaviors together, which is, again, fine. But checking in behaviors are what's going to get you to go to the next level. And and yes, that can be the codependent or the stance where two people are just colluding in not being who they are. And that's limited, right? So to get out of that, if you, let's say you are the growth development person and you're kind of flexing some muscles and you just read a book and it's kind of inspiring you to grow and you're finally seeing some of your own patterns and you're like, wait, I want to do something about this, and you go hire a coach or a therapist, and you're with a partner who is not interested. Well, the deal is you will outgrow that person if you keep growing. And they can either come along with you through your behavior of inspiring them to change, or they will just clamp down and stay stuck. And that, imagine the person sitting on the couch watching something that they're really, really into, and you want to go outside and explore the mountains or nature, and they don't want to come. And you grab their hand and you try to pull them up off the couch. And it's like the feeling is like them, they actually don't want to go. They're like, no, I actually don't want to. I want to stay here. They have every right, your partner has every right to stay where they are. And if you, the harder you try to pull them up and get to go explore the mountains with you, it can actually cause a lot more problems and be even more frustrating for both of you. So I don't recommend that approach. I recommend be the change, right, as Gandhi said, and live it. And they'll either get inspired or they'll get threatened and clamped down. And then you have a choice. Do I want to be with someone like this who actually doesn't want to go explore life with me or not?
What is there? So I'm guessing that what you're talking about is an event horizon. I can imagine the person listening right now saying, hey, I'm with this partner. Let's just say it's a woman listening right now. I'm with this guy and I've tried everything. I'm into personal growth. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm trying to grow myself. At what point do I give up? At what point do I feel like this isn't happening? The event horizon's here. I don't think this guy's going to get off the couch, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. I think you got to try.
Yeah.
Right. First, you got to make an effort, and because it's easy to just sort of blame him and then bail. I walk women through. I have courses where I teach this, and I actually walk women through a series of steps, like to try to get him on board and to get him to connect deeper. And one of the things that a woman, if we're going with the stereotype here, needs to do with a shut down man or an emotionally unavailable man is she needs to teach him what's important to her. Because us guys didn't learn relational or emotional literacy as kids. We were trained out of that. We have it in us. We have that capacity, certainly. It's not just like, oh, guys are not like that. No, we have the capacity to relate and go deep and be super emotional and connect with our hearts. We have all of that in us, and we need help. So if you want to help your guy, you can, but he has to get how deeply important it is to you, and you have to be willing to put your foot down and not budge and say, no, this is a non-negotiable need I have, is to have you validate my feelings, for example. You need to learn how to listen to me like my girlfriends do. And if you don't, I'm not sure I can be with someone who actually can't get my experience or try to understand me and isn't willing to work to do that. And guys that are solid men will step up here, and they will go, okay, wow, I didn't know this was so important to you. And I'm going to try, and I'm going to make an effort, and I'm willing to learn this for you. If not for myself, I'll do it for you because I care about you. And eventually he'll see that actually creates less drama and less stress, and it's getting him connection and sex and the things that he wants too. But he's got to, it takes a special kind of guy to do that. And he's got to be either in enough pain, like divorce is on the table, for example. He might lose his kids. He might have to pay alimony and child support. Who knows what's going on? Or he has to actually want it himself. He has to be hungry. So, you guys know this from your work. You can't really make someone grow. They have to want it from the inside. And that's what the woman has to find in this example is, where does he really want this? Yeah. And some men don't. They'd rather stay stuck, and that's okay.
Who do you seem to attract more in your coaching and your expertise, your courses? Do you attract men or women more?
I'd say more women for sure, maybe 60-40, 75-25. Okay. And the guys that I do attract are very into growth and development, and they're rolling up their sleeves and they're ready to go to bat for themselves and their partner.
Yeah, I was going to say, as we're listening, I know that that is the stereotype, is that the woman is trying to make the relationship better and the guy's just like, all he wants to do is watch the game. My observation has been, though, and maybe this is just because of the circles I run in or the people that, I like to spend time around, I know quite a few men who are very into development growth. Like that's very important to them. And one thing I've observed is that when a man starts to grow, there's actually, even if the woman has believed that she's been tugging his sleeve the whole time wanting him to grow, when he becomes actually authentically empowered, there's almost like an unsettling happen that feelings with that, or a feeling that for the woman that she got what she was asking for, but this is not what she wanted. Like it's almost like the woman doesn't want the man to be empowered because suddenly she's not as in control, or he's not as easy to manipulate, or like she thought that this is what she wanted, but then when she got it, she was like, oh, this is not what I expected it to look like. Is that something that you've run into?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really well said, Antonia. I mean, people claim they want closeness all the time, for example, and then when they finally get it, they run the other direction. So what's cool about this, though, is that if the man does finally step up and get involved, she's going to now have to face another layer of herself. And she's going to be confronted with that, which is, again, good news for the growth development person, bad news for someone who wants to stay comfortable. But either way, you're being asked to grow, and I think that's a really beautiful moment, because if we want to keep evolving, there's always going to be new challenges that we face as a couple and as individuals.
Yeah.
And it's just really wonderful to just meet them with open arms, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that moment of really truly understanding what it means to fully accept responsibility for your relationship. I think this plays out in all areas of life, but that moment when you go, well, I've just been trying to get him to do this thing, right? And he just won't do it. And then if he does it, and all of a sudden now you have some sort of like internal kickback or some sort of block inside of you, that's the moment, or the moment of truth. And you can change the genders around. Maybe a man has been saying the same thing and he's been wanting his girlfriend or wife or pair bond partner, however that looks, regardless of your preferences, etc. And you get what you're asking for, but now it goes back to, well, then I now have to start scaling walls again too. I have to start scaling mountains. If this person is now on this road with me, then that means that I have to keep progressing forward too. I can't just use this other person as an excuse for staying stuck, which I think sometimes happens. It's like,
totally.
I can't go forward because this person's not going forward with me. And it's like, well, now they're going forward, and now you have to go, oh, well, maybe I was just synthetically using them as my reason for not growing. So I think that, looking at it like a three-legged race, like you just like if you're really going to, I think, have what you called a sustainable relationship, which I think is a great way of saying it, there has to be that agreement that it doesn't matter how far down the road goes. And the road goes, I haven't seen an end in sight. The road just keeps going as far as I'm concerned. That's the job. The job is to keep going, traveling down that road together. And sometimes one person picks the other person up, and sometimes one person gives the other person a bit of a kick to incentivize them. But regardless, that's the job. The job is just to keep going. And I think it can look all sorts of ways.
Yeah, and I would say I want to speak to another layer we haven't mentioned, which is we tend to attract what we need to heal, right? So if we get married, pretty soon after the honeymoon phase wears off, at first we like everything, we like the same things. Pretty soon, though, we're going to realize we're opposites and we're very different. Well, that's built in and designed in this weird, precise, divine way to help us reclaim these disowned parts of ourselves. So whatever your relationship situation is, I don't care what it is, you're getting what you need. And what I mean by that is you're getting the growth opportunity that you need. And you can take it or not. And that's a total choice. But at every challenge, every point along the way in my relationships, I've gotten exactly what I needed. Now our mind will play tricks on us and think, no, this is actually kind of a nightmare. I don't want an abusive relationship, or I don't want this. Well, you're actually... The whole point you've attracted that into your life is so that you can deal with your own stuff and get you even more authentically you and get you more empowered, no matter what your partner's doing. So we have lessons to learn in a relationship, and when we don't learn them, we repeat like a broken record, and it's painful, and it's annoying, and it's hurtful, and we want to go crazy sometimes. But that's the point. So you got to get your shit together and face yourself if you really want to go to the next level, and stop complaining about your partner. Like, take the bull by the horns here and get the lesson. And then you get to move on to the next lesson. You graduate. And that's called growth. But again, that's uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't want that. So fortunately, you have a choice.
Let's move from the abstract a little bit here down to some more concrete, okay? And I can just imagine you listening are going, yeah, you guys don't have no clue my situation. I mean, you're talking in these abstract, general terms about owning my own shit, all this stuff. What do you guys actually mean about that? What are you talking about, Jayson? Like, how do I want to be better in the relationship I'm in. What do I do? Like, what's the first step? Where do I go from here? I do want to own my own stuff, but I don't even really know what you mean by that. I mean, I feel like I'm showing up, but help me unpack this and move forward in my relationship.
Yeah, great. So, okay, so a woman's with a guy, let's say a guy's with a woman who's needy. He's judging her as needy. So you go for the most annoying, charged, resentful trait that you have about your partner. And you go, okay, why does that bother me so much, right? What is the big deal here? And why does it upset me? And chances are you grew up with a needy mom or someone in your life that was needy, and so you have a repulsion towards needy people. Well, that's all that means is your partner is trying to help you own that you're needy. And the moment you own that, you embrace that part of yourself that you're actually as needy to the same degree as that your partner, you're free. That doesn't have charge anymore. You now can love them as they are with their, quote, needy behavior, and it doesn't get you the way it was. So that's a real specific example of how you could work with that. Now, I get that this is a pretty deep view, and not many people are going to be like, whoa, what are you talking about? Again, if you look close enough, you've attracted some version of your parents, and you're trying to work something out. And it's really annoying if you don't have this view. It just becomes a relationship and your partner become kind of a pain in the butt. But if you have the view, you're like, oh, their annoyance and their annoying behavior is helping me heal something from my past, like my baggage with my dad, my baggage with my mom. And if you say yes to that, it's just amazing what can happen.
That's incredible. So it sounds like what we're in relationship, I mean, this is my words, not yours necessarily, but it sounds like what we're actually doing is we're learning the person in relationship with us is mirroring back to us the parts of ourselves that we need to love about ourselves. And we're really, in a sense, loving ourselves through this relationship even more, and which enables us to love the other person, which enables them to love themselves. And it's kind of this positive spin if we're going this direction. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that's really well said, Joel. I mean, it's win-win all around if we're all playing the game this way.
What is the major resistance people have to doing that? Because, I mean, obviously, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So
Yeah.
Totally.
What are people protecting? Like, what do they think is more important than being able to enter that kind of dynamic?
It's their nervous system. They're charged, their body, when we're with someone long term, we start to get triggered and upset, and we don't have rational thinking about it. Our partner looks at us a certain way, gives us a look in the kitchen, and all of a sudden we shut down. And it happens in nanoseconds. Or you're in the other room and your partner's tone of voice triggers you, and you feel like now you left the building. You're so angry and upset just because of their tone of voice, and it's like, what is going on here? Well, the brain research shows, and Stan Tatkin does amazing work here, and Daniel Siegel and Ellen Shore, that if you look close enough, our bodies are wired for threat. They're actually not wired for love. They're wired for threat. And if we grew up in a family, no matter what your family was, there was threats going on. Whether it was a dirty look at the dinner table, or violent abuse going on in your home, or just a subtle little not getting picked up at the right time in third grade by one of your parents. Whatever the subtle threat is, it goes in the nervous system. If it doesn't get repaired, it doesn't repair, and there's an injury there. And then we attract later in life an experience to mimic that so that we can repair the injury. It's really fascinating. And so most people don't have this view. They don't know how to deal with their nervous system. They have no idea why they get so angry, why the small fights and the little things turn into these huge blowout fights. They don't know why. And then they keep looping and they won't get tools. So our nervous systems are definitely part of the problem here. It's really challenging to work with our nervous system in a long-term partnership. And so things like meditation and mindfulness can really help with that. But the thing that helps the most is becoming a safe person for the other party. Like I call it like reparenting your partner. We want to become like a loving parent to the injured child that's living inside of our partner. And we become the safe place for them to cry on and to throw their tantrum on. And we just hold space and listen to them in a loving way. Now that's can be really hard to do, but you've got to learn to master your nervous system over time. And this is, the Stan Tatkin will tell you that the number one reason people get divorced is because they can't regulate their upset. They don't know how, and they're clueless, and it just hijacks them, right? We go into the back part of our brain, and we're now an animal. So I'd say that's it.
The style of recreating an old wound, is that what other schools of thought call imago relationships? Is that...
Yeah, imago is great. I think that was the first Harville, I think is right. That's a Harville Hendricks thing. Mm-hmm. And it definitely popularized this notion that we attract our parents, which is, I think, pretty common now and out there. And most smart people kind of get that like, yeah, this is the deal. And we can go even further with it with the work of Stan Tatkin and I believe the work I'm doing with people to get that there's a lesson here to heal and that I need to take full responsibility for doing it. And we can have each other's back, right, on this healing journey called relationship. And we can learn to be who we are and stay connected.
So then this concept that we're wired for threat, which makes, complete and total sense, because I feel like over time we've become more wired for relationships and connection and love, because that fundamentally helps us all, like on a macro level, live, like evolution
Survive.
Eventually, right? Like our holistic survival is based on us being able to love each other, but our individual survival is based on us being able to be vigilant and survive as individuals. So being wired for threat at this time period or the stage of humanity makes sense. So then, are there any? Can you think of anything that's something that maybe could be implementable almost immediately to take that sort of autoresponder system, nervous system thing happening for all of us? And then you mentioned meditation, you mentioned mindfulness. Is there
any in the moment hacks is what she's asking for?
Can you think of an in the moment hack, or even maybe something somebody could be doing as a daily discipline so that when they get to that moment of autoresponder that they're not so, like you said, hijacked?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll mention a few. One hack, it's not an in-the-moment hack, it's a proactive hack, which is just to have the mindset, right? That if you and your partner at home are listening and you talk about this, have the mindset that, look, I will be triggered by you for the rest of my life, and you are going to behave in ways that upset my nervous system forever. So given that that's a fact, how are we going to have each other's back? How are we going to learn to be kind and loving in the challenging moments and be respectful? How am I going to learn to be a soft place to land, given that my tone of voice will probably forever upset you? What can I do? I can work on my tone of voice, sure, but you can work on, okay, you're reacting to my tone of voice, then I get defensive. We need to start talking about our pattern. Okay, this happens, then that happens, then you get upset, then I get upset. All right, well, let's see if we can work towards minimizing the upset. Knowing that the upset's probably never going to go away, we can minimize it. We can become skillful. That's how we just need to have that mindset. So that's number one. In the moment hacks can be great things. Touch is a wonderful hack that if you just sit down in a non-oppositional stance next to your partner rather than facing directly in front of them, but go sit next to them and calm yourself down. And then when it feels right, you can put your hand on their back or their hand on their leg. You can ask permission. Is it okay if I touch you right now? Those are amazing little hacks that can calm the nervous system down instantly. Touch is one of the fastest ways to get a person to chill out. Another one is to go and stand next to them, again, right next to them, not in an oppositional stance, but next to them, and say something really sweet. I know you hate my guts right now, and I wanted to let you know I love you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things like that we can do, because words can also soothe someone, and you must have a calm tone of voice. Like my wife's thing with me is my tone of voice, right? And I'm over here I don't have a tone of voice, but I do. For her and her nervous system, I have a tone of voice, and so I continually work at that. And when I have a tone of voice and she calls me out on that, It's my job to calm down, take a few breaths, 3 breaths, 5 big deep breaths. Okay, let me try again. And then I say it again and see how she responds. So those are just a few little hacks you could try.
Those are fantastic. I've noticed for me, I get emotionally anchored to the physical location I'm in, like the energy of a room. So if we're in the middle of a battle or a fight, I frequently will walk away to de-anchor the emotion, right? Like from that physical spot. And Joel used to interpret that as me, what we call hanging up the phone, which is like, I'm ending this conversation and you're not allowed to talk about it anymore. And so,
I used to get so triggered.
Oh, it was so triggering.
Yeah.
Because I would get overwhelmed by the emotions. I'm in the typology system we use. I'm a thinker, and emotions overwhelm me pretty dramatically. Whereas Joel is a feeler, he can hold space for emotions almost endlessly. It's like a superpower of his. But me, I just get overwhelmed and I can't even think anymore. And so I would physically leave the location and give myself like 10 minutes. But for him, that was me just going, what we call hanging up the phone. And so eventually we had to get to a point where I was like, no, actually, if I stay here, it's only going to escalate. If I can leave the room for like 10 minutes, I'll come back and be a whole new person. And that was something it took us a surprisingly long time to figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, some of us, one of the partners usually needs space, and they get overwhelmed with more words, more talking, more processing, more emotions. They need to go away. And going away is usually perceived as a threat. I'm more like Joel. When my wife used to go away, it would like freak me out. Send me into this whole abandonment spiral, right? So we need to learn, like Joel and I, obviously the lesson for us is to get stronger with being okay with you taking space and and that's awesome. And then your work, like if you probably already did this, but my wife's work and some of the women's work, if you're in that role, is to just use words and say, I need a break. I'll be back in 10. I'll be back in 30. I'll be back. I'm not leaving forever. Like those words actually help, because if we know our partner, they grew up in a family where one parent left or one parent wasn't there a lot. And so to them, it's exactly the same. The amygdala in the brain registers it as the person's leaving forever.
Yeah.
Even though we get rationally that's not true, the body says they're leaving forever. So we've got to have a lot of kindness toward each other. And I love that hack of just giving yourself permission to take space and doing your best to put words to it.
Yeah, that was exactly what I had to do. Is I just had to, as opposed to just get up and leave, which I was so overwhelmed I couldn't, that's all I could think about doing was getting out of the emotionally anchored spot. That was the work I had to do. Is I had to say, I'm not leaving the conversation. I'm not ending the conversation. I'm simply going to another room. Like I will literally be in the next room over where the emotions are not hovering around me. And I'll be RB, I'll be right back.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be back. That's the key statement. I'll be back.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was great about the hacks you just mentioned, and the one that is the daily mindset hack, which is this idea that I am going to trigger you and you are going to trigger me. I think a lot of the reasons why these triggerings start stacking on top of each other is we add should statements like, well, you shouldn't be triggering me. And so I'm indignant. Like now I'm righteously indignant that you've triggered me, or that you're triggered by me. Now I'm indignant that you would be triggered by me. But I love the idea of just accepting reality as it is and not adding a bunch of should statements on there like this shouldn't be happening. It's like, well, no, this not only is this happening, but it's not going to stop. Like this is in perpetuity for the rest of our lives. So just being willing to go, okay, this is how it is, then you're not adding that indignation or that that should statement on top of it. Now you've just completely removed that element, and now you can work with what's going on. So I think that's
right. And those people that do that are in a fantasy that we can actually have more peace than war in a relationship. There's just always going to be upset, and let's just relax around it. It's okay. Mm-hmm. And our culture trains us, and the neighbors train us. Everybody puts on their happy faces in their marriage, and we all think that we're the ones that are sucking at relationship. Right? Oh shit! It should be less painful. It should be easier. It should be. And if we're honest, and I like to just tell people, look, it's hard for everybody. No one's, it's not easy for anyone. And that tends to help people because they do compare themselves to a fantasy of what they project onto other people, right? And then they beat themselves up about it.
Yeah, like the Facebook phenomenon. Everybody's got it better than me.
Yeah.
Jayson, thank you for being on the show today. This is good stuff, and I think it's relevant. I think that as we grow as people, I mean, we are wired as humans to want to relate to each other and be romantically relating to each other. So I think these kind of conversations, the idea of really treating a relationship as a growth place for you as a person, if you're listening, I think this is powerful stuff. And I'd love you to go check out what Jason's doing. And Jayson, I'd like you to just briefly give us a little synopsis of what you do. What do you actually do with people, couples, and where can people find more about what you do?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, so people can find more out about me at my website, jasongaddis.com. And if you want to just get that simple marriage success map, the little 3 types of marriage that we talked about, and I say only one of them prevails, and that's the growth development mindset. If you want to just get that map and have a visual of it and a short explanation, you can just go jasongaddis.com/map, and then you just opt in and download it. So I'm really just about helping people be authentically who they are through the vehicle of relationship. So I teach people to embrace challenge in a marriage. I teach people the proper view that you need to have if you want to go the distance with someone. Because look, most of us really don't want to die alone or grow old alone or be alone. And we're, like you guys said, we're wired for partnership also. We're wired more for threat than for love, but we're still wired for love. We're pack animals, and we're designed to be together. So being together as human beings, though, is challenging. So my job is to teach you how to make that process less challenging and to embrace the challenges that do come, to learn from them, to grow from them, and to create indestructible partnerships.
We're going to add your link to the podcast notes underneath this podcast on our website, but I've noticed that your name is not spelled the usual way. Can you spell your name for anybody who just wants to immediately look you up?
Yeah, you got it. JAYSONGADDIS. So Jayson with a Y.
All right. And if you didn't catch that, we will have the link underneath the podcast notes of this podcast.
Yeah. So what do you think? You've been listening here with us talking with Jayson, and you haven't been able to talk because you don't have a microphone, but you can come over to personalityhacker.com, leave a comment, ask a question, be a part of this conversation, be a part of the growing community. Also, here at Personality Hacker at facebook.com/personalityhacker or twitter.com/personalityhack.
If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. And if you are feeling a spirit of reciprocity, if you would leave us a rating and review on iTunes, that helps us out a lot. It encourages iTunes to put us higher in charts and to recommend us under other podcasts. So if that's something that you feel inspired to do, please feel free to leave a rating and review.
Yep. Jayson, thanks so much for being a part of the show today. Awesome
Thanks,
having
guys.
you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.